If Jesus wasn't born on December 25th, then when was he born exactly? Tonight we build a case with 9 forensic clues: a king's final winter, a controversial census, a priest's weekly rota, shepherds under open skies, and a star that seemed to move. This is not guesswork. It's scripture cross-checked with Roman history and the night sky. At the end, I'll narrow it to the most likely 2-week window, and a meaningful reason it matters more than a date on a calendar. Stay with me. Here's the method. We'll start where both Matthew and Luke intersect with known history, then layer scripture on top of fixed points: Herod's death, Quirinius's census, Zechariah's temple service, and Tiberius' regnal year. We'll keep what's solid, flag what's debated, and show our math. Whenever I cite mainstream scholarship or a reputable astronomy source, you'll see a small citation card. If a point is speculative, I'll say so plainly. Both Matthew and Luke place Jesus' birth during the time of Herod the Great. Herod's death is the first anchor point. The mainstream scholarly date puts his death in March or April of 4 BCE based on Josephus and aligned chronology. If that's correct, Jesus must have been born before 4 BCE. A minority view argues Herod actually died in 1 BCE, often pointing to a different lunar eclipse and rereading Josephus's sequence of events. If this is right, it shifts the whole nativity timeline later. We'll keep this alternative in play and test it honestly near the end. For now, we proceed with both possibilities open, labeling them Track A, 4 BCE, and Track B, 1 BCE, and see which one makes the data sing in harmony rather than fight. Luke 2 says a decree from Caesar Augustus led Joseph and Mary to Bethlehem. Luke also mentions the census associated with Quirinius, the governor of Syria. Here's the tension. The well-documented Quirinius census occurred in AD 6 to 7, almost a decade after the mainstream date of Herod's death in 4 BCE. Scholars have wrestled with this for generations. Mainstream references acknowledge the AD 6 census and the apparent mismatch with Herod's timeline. Some propose solutions: that Luke refers to a prior enrollment registration under Augustus that Quirinius had a hand in, administratively not as the formal governor. Or that the Greek can mean this census was before the one under Quirinius. These are harmonization proposals, possible but not provable. We hold them gently while we keep building the case. Luke 1 says Zechariah, John the Baptist's father, served in the division of Abijah, one of the 24 priestly courses rotating weekly. If we could pin the calendar of those courses for a given year, we could estimate when Zechariah served, when John was conceived, and roughly 6 months later when Jesus was conceived. Luke 1:26-36. Scholars outline how these courses rotated. Still, the absolute anchoring to a specific civil year is debated, so we'll use it as a probability shaper, not a hard clock. Some studies argue that Zechariah's service likely fell in early summer, which, after adding gestation intervals, yields a late September to early October birth for Jesus. Others, using different starting anchors, land in winter or early spring. Our job is to see how this interacts with the other clues, not to make it carry the whole argument alone. Luke describes shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch by night. Some say this rules out midwinter, Others note that flocks in Judea could remain outside in milder winters, especially around lambing. The climate of the Judean hill country allows for both possibilities depending on the year. So this clue leans away from the deepest winter, but it isn't a knockout punch by itself. We keep moving. What did the Magi see? Scripture is spare on details. A star that prompted a long journey appeared to go before them and stood over the place. Astronomy can illustrate candidates, not prove theology. But one famous candidate is the triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in 7 BCE, 3 close passes in Pisces across the year, and a related planetary massing in 6 BCE. To ancient sky watchers, such rare events in a constellation linked to the region of Judea could signal a royal birth. The standing still can be modeled by retrograde motion as Earth overtakes a planet. These are plausible astronomical backdrops, not certainties. A beloved theological motif is that the word tabernacled among us, John 1:14. Some interpreters see a poetic echo of Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles, usually in September or October. The imagery is beautiful, and when combined with the priestly division math and the shepherd scene, it nudges us toward a fall window. But motif is not mathematics. We treat it as a supporting harmony, not a driver. Luke 3 timestamps John's ministry to the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar. Jesus begins his ministry soon after, being about 30 years old, Luke 3:23. Depending on whether you count Tiberius years from his co-regency with Augustus or from his sole reign, you can land around AD 27/28 or AD 28/29. Backing up about 30 years lands in the 2 to 3 BCE to 1 BCE range if you take about loosely, or a bit earlier if about is closer to exact. This is not a precision instrument, but it keeps a fall nativity plausible. Would Rome order mass movement in deep winter? Empires love efficiency. Registrations often rode on existing rhythms, harvest, post-harvest, or festival seasons when roads were passable and people had already moved. This logistical common sense doesn't prove a date, but it leans toward a non-midwinter movement, which again fits a fall cluster, especially if population flow coincided with great feasts when Judea swelled with pilgrims. Now we pressure test the 1 BCE Herod model. Advocates argue that Josephus' reference to a lunar eclipse aligns better with late 1 BCE than with March 13th, 4 BCE, and that the chain of events between the eclipse and Passover compresses more naturally in that later year. If correct, it moves Jesus' birth window later as well. Many land in 2 to 3 BCE for Jesus' birth. This reading remains disputed, but it's a serious good faith attempt to square sources. We keep it visible as an alternate window. Stacking the 9 clues, weighting anchored history most heavily, Herod's death, the AD 6 census tension, and treating priestly rota, shepherds, feast imagery and astronomy as probability shapers, the most coherent window remains late September to early October, consistent with a fall nativity under track A, Herod 4 BCE, with a secondary later 2 to 3 BCE window under track B, Herod 1 BCE. We're not replacing worship with a spreadsheet. We're honoring Scripture by letting history and the heavens give us context. If God timed the birth of his Son to a season of tents and joy, then the message is the same in every season. He dwells with us. Whether you celebrate in December or meditate on a fall nativity, let the point land, Emmanuel. If this deep dive helped, share it. And if you want a follow-up where we test the Star of Bethlehem models one by one, tell me which you find most persuasive in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more cinematic Bible stories and expositions every week.